Chapter 5, Bargaining in Good Faith, page 137. Bargaining in good faith is usually an agreement between two or more parties. These parties intend to have an enforceable agreement. Good faith is a standard implying that there should be no intent to take advantage of another or defraud another. If one is to act in good faith, they must act openly, fairly, and honestly, and the existence of negligence should never be irrelevant. The book talks about legal protection of the institution of bargaining in good faith. It would seem that bargaining in good faith is hard to come by these days. For example, there have been a lot of bargaining in bad faith in the marketplace. Some of the possibility of bargaining in bad faith are withholding information, bargaining with no intention of reaching an agreement, misleading other party with regards to one's own intention, refusal to make an effort to reach an agreement, breaking off bargaining process in the pursuit of a better proposition for another party. All these might constitute bargaining in bad faith, but it all depends on if the party had agreed to negotiate or had an agreement to negotiate in good faith. Bargaining in bad faith can bring substantial loss to a party. In the example the book gave us, the American case Hoffman versus Red Owl Store. The franchisee sold his business without full disclosure. As a result, the prospective franchisor became a victim of bad faith in bargaining. The duty to negotiate or bargain in good faith can be seen in a few ways. First, the agreement that fails or allegedly fails for the lack of certainty of term or incompleteness. The duty to negotiate in good faith applies only in expressed or implied contractual undertaking. If both parties agree to agree, the party who does not agree to negotiate on the missing terms has breached a duty to negotiate in good faith. Parties who negotiate in hopes of reaching an agreement have a duty to negotiate and bargain in good faith. Second, there is a possible enforceability of a duty to negotiate in good faith in the context where a party is able to extend or renew an agreement at a price to be agreed in the future. An example of this would be a rental agreement. The book gives an example of the plaintiff tenant looking to have an option enforced against the landlord to have an obligation to negotiate in good faith in regards to the rent. It basically means that the first 12 months will have a fixed rental price, and anything after 12 months will be negotiated in good faith. Uncertainty of terms. The possibility of the existence of a duty to negotiate or bargain in good faith can be seen in the context of certainty of terms. One of the leading decisions in this area is Hillis and Company Limited versus Arcos. Court will do its best to give meaning to every contractual clauses. However, if the court finds a clause that is unclear, the contract will fail, or the worst case scenario would be the court giving a meaning you never intended. That could really hurt. In Hillis and Company Limited versus Arcos, the court upheld the decision of May and Butcher's general rule that if there are any essential terms of a contract missing, there is no binding contract. In this case, the essential terms of the contract was the price. Our Honorable Lord Wright suggested that agreement to agree could be binding if the agreement was to agree to the prescribed terms of what amounted to a binding contract. Both parties in this case had agreed to a reasonable agreement. Thus, in Lord Wright's view, the agreement was enforceable. Okay, in the case Courtney and Fairbairn Limited versus Lani Brothers Hotel Limited, Lord Denning took a different view. He suggested that the missing price of the building is an essential terms of the contract. There is no contract if the price is missing. If there is an agreed method of determining the price, the essential term of the contract price will have been met. Right? Option to renew. This is the second possibility of the existence of a duty to negotiate or bargain in good faith. It is very common in the rental agreement where the new rental price is to be agreed upon by the parties. In the case Empress Tower Limited versus Bank of Nova Scotia, the court should try to give the proper legal effect to any clause the party understood and intended. The case was upheld to enforce the option to renew a lease for an additional 5-year period. This case took the same view as the Hillis case. Court is not there to set interim agreements aside for uncertainty. The court is to give meaning to a clause whenever possible. The result of the agreement should not be constructed by the court and to the surprise of the parties. The case had a method or a formula to determine the market rate. Even though there is no common law obligation that requires both parties to negotiate in good faith, there was an implied term requiring good faith negotiation for the renewal of the rental unit. If we look at Manning Enterprise Canada Limited versus Canada, there were some uncertainties of terms in the agreement. It did not provide a formula or a method to determine the market rate of rent. The court held that the renewal clause in the rental agreement was an agreement to agree. This agreement to agree, or also known as an agreement to negotiate, is too uncertain to be enforceable. The court had to distinguish a way to treat agreements to agree on a rental as an agreement to a fair and reasonable market rate. Okay. Conduct of tendering process. The tendering process of invitation to treat as has been transformed under R versus Ron Engineering and Construction Limited. Ron Engineering made the lowest bid to a government contract. This is a contract known as Contract A. In bidding for Contract A, they made an error by leaving out the labor cost. To reduce their loss, they wanted to forfeit the deposit and cut their loss. Ron Engineering did not want to enter into Contract B. So sometimes it is worth it to breach a contract. The Supreme Court held that the plaintiff would fail to recover its deposit. This case changed the traditional invitation for a potential tender to make an offer. And in the Ron Engineering case, there is a two-phase process where there are two contracts. The tender call is the offer. The bid submission is the acceptance of the offer, which will create the contract A. The consideration is the preparation of the bid. Contract A has a contractual liability on the tender not to withdraw from the bid, an offer to treat the tenderer fair and in good faith. Contract B is the main contract that is to be binding between the offerer and the successful bidder. There are other cases where the process can be conducted in a fair manner. The case Healthcare Developer Inc. versus Newfoundland requires all person issuing the tender call to act in good faith. Other cases will have similar obligation by having implied terms in the contract which require all bidder to be treated fairly and equally. I quote, "The requirement of fair and equal treatment precludes the correction of an invalid bid by a bidder after the close of tenders. Even perversely, it may